moments, and as I got ready to shoot my shot and I looked down and he was looking at me and kind of had like a face off for like 2 seconds, and it was just like, and I kind of felt bad, but then I wanted to wait a little longer. It was just an instinct. It wasn't like, I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. It was just, my lips was dry a little bit. I don't know.
He wasn't trying to do anything disrespectful, guys.
Kids, go home and Google Randolph Childress.
I was about to say the same thing.
Randolph Childress.
That was the best.
Google Randolph Childress. Until that play, the Randolph Childress thing was the most disrespectful thing that I had seen on the basketball
court. But it's not anymore.
It ain't that anymore.
To that. All right, we are now thrilled to welcome in ESPN reporter Tim McMahon, who has covered the Rockets for a long time. You have been leading the league in usage rate among reporters in this last month or two. Tim, of course, now with James leaving the Rockets, he is the second leading scorer in franchise history behind Hakeem. Harden, first in assists, 3-pointers made, free throws, all-star spot in 8 seasons as a Rocket. So given the long picture, not just this morning when everyone woke up, but big picture, what should James Harden's legacy in Houston be?
I really think it is a complicated legacy. He is, with all due respect to Moses Malone and you, Robert, he's the second best player in franchise history. But unlike Hakeem, he did not deliver a championship. Unlike Hakeem, he did not, stay in Houston for his entire prime. And then obviously this was a bitter divorce. And I think part of Harden's legacy is obviously the individual brilliance. He was a perennial MVP candidate, won the MVP, the scoring titles, the assist titles, revolutionized offensive basketball in the NBA, but there's also the short shelf life with his hand-picked co-stars. 3 years, then he couldn't wait to get rid of Dwight Howard. 2 years with Chris Paul. 1 year with Russell Westbrook, then they both wanted out. And so I think that has to be considered part of, like I said, what is really a complicated legacy for James Harden with the Rockets.
What do you guys see as Harden's legacy there?
Well, look, this is what his legacy is going to be. No one will ever wear his jersey again, and his jersey will hang up in the Raptors at some point in time. That is the biggest compliment to somebody's legacy. That's starting it. Yes, it is very, very complicated, like Tim. He's the second best player to ever play for the Rockets. All of these things are compliments because they have a great, like Clyde Drexler, they've had great players. But Robert Horry, obviously, they drafted me, so I'm going to count myself in that also. But ultimately, I think that's where you look at the final piece of his legacy. And will anybody wear his jersey again? Will it hang up in the Raptors? And the answer is yes.
I don't know about that one because you got to understand, Tillman Fertitta is the owner of this team now. He only had the pleasure of having Harden for 3 years. So I don't know if he's going to say, okay, we're going to put him up in the Raptors like the other guys who cemented their legacy. Those guys are in the Raptors. So it's going to be different because if you look at what James did, he never really took him to the promised land. Yeah. He asked for all this stuff. He got a big contract. He got all these players to place around him, and then he left town in the manner they left town. So right now, there is a nasty taste in the mouth of the Houston's fans, and that's what's the most important thing, the Houston's fans, that we gave you everything you wanted. We did all these things. And tell me, even when I tried to open up a restaurant for this dude, and he left. And so there's a lot of things that the taste is not so great in Houston. And Houston only respects champions because look at Warren Moon, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, but they don't really put him in the Houston football legacy because he did not win a championship.
Tim, I don't know how you see that, and also, by the way, how you see the fact that James did end up going to Brooklyn when we know the conversations were also so hot and heavy with Philadelphia that was willing to offer them Ben Simmons in return. Did any kind of sort of bad feelings either about Harden wanting to leave or about his old friend Daryl Morey being the guy in Philadelphia play into this as well?
Well, clearly the bad feelings about Harden wanting to leave didn't impact the final decision because he got his first choice. His first choice was to go to Brooklyn, and then he was like, okay, I'll be fine with Philly, and then some other teams got added to the list. I really don't think that the relationship and the whatever friction there might be with Daryl Morey was a real factor here. Look, Ben Simmons was on the table. The Rockets did not get the young franchise cornerstone that they've been insisting on getting in return for James Harden. I just think, though, when it got down to it, the historic package of picks that they got back from the Nets, that was the deciding factor. The fact that those picks are dated well beyond what will be the primes of Harden, KD, and Kyrie. For a rebuilding franchise, I just think that ended up being something they felt like they could not pass up when they basically had to make a deal.
Well, you mentioned the picks. Also, they ended up with Victor Oladipo out of all of this, Dante Exum, right? So let's take a look. How good is Houston right now? You've got Oladipo joining John Wall in that backcourt. What do you think, Robert?
It's the injury squad right now. Everybody's coming back from injuries. Are they going to be healthy enough? Because these three guys that they have are great players. Cousins, if he can get healthy, good.
Stay healthy.
Whoa.
They're all healthy now.
Good.
So
Yeah,
stay healthy.
yeah, they stay healthy. But if you look at some of them, they're still limping a little bit. And so I don't think they're 100%. So if they can get these guys and get them healthy, they're fine. But those picks, I'm looking at them using those picks because there's going to be another disgruntled superstar out there that's going to say, I want out. And what better place to go than Houston with no state tax,
No state tax.
a great team, and picks. So they set themselves up for future, something down the line.
And for a guy like Victor Oladipo, I look at Gordon Hayward, right? Like Gordon Hayward was averaging 17 points a game in Boston on a championship caliber team, and people were still saying like, oh, well, Gordon Hayward. It's like, no, he's good. Now he's averaging 22 a night in Charlotte because he's got a little bit more leash. He can have a bad night, not have to worry about people criticizing him because he's their guy. Victor Oladipo now has the platform, has the runway to go be a high-level scorer on this team, and it's a matter of getting those reps, getting those minutes, and just going out there and playing. So I like what they have at Victor Oladipo, and to his point, if you have all of these picks, that's how they got James Harden. They traded a couple of players and got a bunch of picks, and then that's what they shipped to OKC to get James Harden. So now it might not be disgruntled. It might just be somebody that's not re-signing.
Right.
It could be somebody that's like, I want to enter free agency, and they don't want to risk it. So it doesn't always have to be disgruntled. A lot of times it is. But there are other scenarios where it's not always such a bad situation, and you have all of this stuff that you've collected to put out there. That's similar to what Danny Ainge did to get Kyrie.
Yep.
It's going to be another superstar that want to, see the grass is green on the other side.
What do you think, Tim?
I do think the other thing we need to keep an eye here on Victor Oladipo before the trade deadline.
There we go. I was
whether
waiting for this one.
he fits really well or not. Look, he's an expiring contract, and I think that's the primary reason that he was more attractive to the Rockets than Karis LeVert, who has 2 years after this year at about $18 million per year. And Victor Oladipo, as an expiring contract, maybe there's a team that really likes what they see. They want his bird rights. Maybe there's a team that just sees value in having the expiring contract. But it could be another really significant chip for Rafael Stone, the new Rockets general manager, to play in the trade market.
If you're Miami, are you interested in Victor Oladipo? There's a lot of teams you can see him fitting in with. We'll have plenty of the season to talk about that. Tim, thank you so much for joining us. I expect you to be no less busy than you have been. We will be looking for all your work.
Thank you.
All right, guys, coming up, who should take the last shot for the Nets now that Harden is joining KD and Kyrie?
Kevin Durant.
No one better to ask than these two. They will make the call.